All right, guys. Today we're going to talk about getting user input, and I want to preface this by saying user input is a little bit complicated in Java, and this probably isn't the best place for this topic. Honestly, probably should get you some more experience writing Java before we dive into this. Um, but I think interacting with programs is really important. So I've kind of gone back and forth on where I should put this. I'm going to put this relatively early in the course because I think it's important for you to be able to interact with a person. That said, this is kind of funny. It's not really super intuitive sometimes. I'm going to do my level best here. I'm going to give you some best practices. This might feel tough, and that's okay. Like, this may be one of the harder things we do for the first, solid chunk of the course. So, I've got a new project here. I'm going to go ahead and hit run on this thing and just see what's going on. So far I just have sample code that I've changed to print out what it is that I'm trying to do. Okay, now in order to start using or start getting input from the user, the first thing we're going to need is some kind of a scanner import. So that's going to be let's try the word import. So we're going to import java.util.scanner. And this is going to give us a scanner class that we're going to be able to make an object out of that's going to go ahead and actually do our scanning for us. So that's going to be our first thing here. Here we're going to make a scanner that will listen to the system input. So this is going to listen to the console, essentially. So we're making a scanner object. That's what I'm declaring here, is what kind of thing am I making? I'm making a scanner. I'm going to call my scanner user input. You only get to make one of these per program, so don't sweat it. You're really going to want to make one of these per program. It's going to make your life a hell of a lot easier. So I'm just going to call mine user input, and we'll use it throughout, even though my goal here is to get this to ask a couple of questions. And the way we do this is we do new, and then we want to make a scanner object, and we want to point it at system.input. So we could point that at a file, we could point that at some other kind of input stream. In our case, we really want to point it at the console, and when the user is kind of typing into the console. So that's system.in. All right. Let's ask our two questions. So here are the two questions I'm going to want to ask. I'm going to want to ask system out print line, and the thing I'm going to ask first is, what's your favorite number? And then I'm going to copy this line, and down here a ways we're going to ask, what's your second favorite number? You can use this, like, what I want to illustrate is how to get multiple inputs from the user. It's not a lot different than getting one, but there can be some hang-ups. So let's go ahead and get some user input. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a variable that's going to be a user input string. And what I'm going to do with this is this string is going to be the result of getting user input dot next line. Okay. The reason I'm doing this, I know I'm asking them for a number, so I could use the command get double. So I'm going to show you this both ways, and then I'm going to talk about what the advantages are. Should be noted the one I'm presenting first is my preferred method. Nothing wrong with the other one per se, but this is going to grow with us a bit better than the other one would. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to get our user input, and then we're going to turn it into a number. So we're going to make a double that we're going to call favorite number. And that's going to be our, we're going to, out of the double class, we're going to get the parse double method. And we're going to point that at user input string. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm using the scanner object, that's user input here, to get the next line that the user entered. Then I'm storing that into this string called user input string. And then I'm feeding that into this parser that's going to turn it into a double for me. And then I'm storing that double in favorite number. So now if we want to print this out a bit, let's grab a system out print. And I'm going to use a printf here. And we're going to say, great. Twice your favorite number. Oops. Is, and we're going to put a float there and a new line, and we're going to feed across our favorite number here. I'm going to leave off this second part for right now, but let's go ahead and see if this is working. So I should be able to run this. Should see our prompt, and now it's waiting for input, so I'm going to put in 123.45, and it didn't double it, but it is clearly a double because it added the padding zeros. Why didn't it double it? It didn't double it because I forgot to double it, because I forgot to do 2 times the favorite number. Great. Okay, and then after we hit enter, you see we printed out twice the favorite number. And then we asked our second question, and now it's not waiting for us here. There's actually nothing going on. If I hit enter, it doesn't do anything. So the reason that it's not waiting for us is that I haven't asked for the user input next line to happen yet. So this is one method here. Let's go ahead and double check that doubling is working, and actually let's go ahead and get our next input. So I'm just going to copy all this stuff. Actually, you know what? I'm going to get the other user input the other way. So let's go ahead and just run this. Check and see that it's working. My favorite number is 123.25. The program doubled it for me. Great. And now it's waiting. So here's the other way. Okay, so if we're going for a second method, this is our second method. What we can do is we can go ahead and make our double to start with. This is going to be the second favorite number. And this is going to be user input, so our scanner, dot, and we're just going to do next double here. Now, the advantage of this is that it's a bit simpler than this previous stuff, right? So let me put some pros and cons here. I don't have any pros for that top one yet, but I do have a con. The con is that it takes a couple lines and an extra variable. Right, I didn't really have to use this user input string in the second one. Let's go ahead and prove that we're getting this. And on this one, we're gonna take half of your favorite number. Okay, so let's run this, see that it's working, and then we'll talk pros cons. Okay, so my favorite number is 58.3. And we doubled it. Great. And my second favorite number is 52.48. And half of that is indeed 26.24. Great. Both of these are working. This is nice. Like, everything's going good, right? Okay, so let's talk our pros and cons. So, pro on the second method. Seems simpler. It actually seems simpler because it is simpler. Con. Let's try a thing quick here. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to say that my favorite number is 123.3. Great. And I'm going to say my second favorite number is 5. I'm going to get an error from that second one. I'm actually going to get an error from the first one as well. So let me show you that. So if I enter that my favorite number is 1, I'm going to get an exception. Okay. Here's the difference. So con on this one relies on the user entering a double. Con on this one still relies on the user entering a double. Okay. Probably not seeing a lot of pros here, right? Okay. The pro on this one is that our input is done. We've stored the user's input as a string, and now we can try to process it in a variety of ways. What I mean by that is we could have 2 ways to process their input. If they type out the number 5, right? If they type out the word 5, I could have a piece of my program devoted to, we're going to try to take what they've written out in English and turn it into a number. The other approach to this won't let me do that, because the other approach is going to error out in the next double process, which I don't have any grab in. Right, so this one lets me grab the user input as a string and allows for processing in multiple ways. I'm going to call it parsing/processing. In other words, we could try to parse it using parse double. And if parse double doesn't work, then I can do something else. Like I might have a method, I might have a way to turn words into numbers. This first method would let me do that. This second method isn't going to let me do that. So this is harder to manage the user inputting unexpected things. Okay, now in order to handle some of this, there are some methods in the user input, in the scanner object. There are some methods that we can use to try to handle this. Some of those are a little bit complicated. Mostly because there's a difference between looking through the next line and actually like consuming it. So let me show you a couple of those. All right, so let's go ahead and let's go grab, actually, let me put another question in here. So my next question here is going to be, let's see. Let's do what's your least favorite number in the middle here. So, I'm just going to say there's a warning about this. this is a bit confusing. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do something like, we're going to say, first, we're going to say if user input dot has next double. Okay, so we need some parentheses here to say what we're ifing. So if the user input, it has a next double. So let's hover this and see what it says. So it returns true if the next token can be interpreted as a double using double method. It doesn't advance. So this is literally just a preview. This is like when the user hit enter, if what they hit enter is actually a double, then we could go ahead and use next double. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to say, all right, I want a double that I'm going to call least favorite. That's going to be user input.next double. And then I'm going to need an else statement here. So the else statement doesn't take a condition. So the else statement is just going to be, what do we do if they didn't enter a number, basically? Well, what we want to do is we want to consume whatever bullshit they put in, right? So we're going to want to take that and throw it away. So in order to do that, we're going to do user input dot next line. So that's going to go ahead and that's going to grab whatever the user input that didn't happen to be a number. It's going to toss it for us. And then we're going to have to do something. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to advise the user that didn't work, right? They didn't give me anything. So I'm going to say that's not a number. And if they do enter a valid least favorite number, I'm going to do one of my formatted prints here. So we're going to print out, yeah, I never liked that number either. And we're going to put our least favorite here. Oops. Those should both have the word number on the end, because naming conventions are important. Okay, so let's run this and see what we get. Okay, so my favorite number is going to be 12. Great, we doubled it. My least favorite number is going to be negative 17. Okay, and I forgot a new line on the end of that. So let's put that in. Okay, and then we're asking what's our second favorite number, and we'll answer 32. Great. Okay, so let's try that again, and let's enter something that's not a number in that second one. So we're going to do 12 again, and we're going to enter some gobbledygook. Says that's not a number. Great. We proceed to our next thought. Okay. If you couple this kind of thing with a while loop, it can work quite well. So I don't want you to not do this, but there's going to be a better way to do this later, probably. You can use these has next doubles if that's your jam. We'll also probably do this with a try catch later. So I'm just going to add a note here to say that this isn't really error handling, but it's kind of feeling like it. The reason it's not really error handling is in this, there's no errors that are being caused, right? If it was error handling, I would be anticipating that an error be caused, and then I would be dealing with the error after it occurs. in this case, I'm kind of error avoidant rather than error handling. Um, let's add that. So it's more like error avoidance. Okay, we could also add some else ifs for if it was an integer, we could actually collect an integer instead of a double. That might be more aesthetically pleasing to our users. That's a thing you could do. Um, do make sure, right, that your next double or next line is in there. If you just do the has next double, there'll be problems because that's not actually consuming what the user input. It'll just hang there. And if it hangs there, then it can be used like the scanner can supply it again the next time you ask. So you got to be just a little bit careful with these. The next double thing is just a check of did the user input something that I could parse as a double, that I could collect as a double, and then this next thing is actually doing that collection. And this one is doing the collection in the case that they didn't input an actual number. Uh, thanks, guys. I hope this is clearer than mud. It is a little bit complicated. Don't feel bad if this feels a little weird. I will catch you guys on the next one.